Hey everybody, welcome. Thank you for coming. My name is Darren Ball. I was just looking through some of the chat here before we get started, so I'd say hello to some people. We've got Crystal here from Camden Town. Been looking forward to this event for a while. Thank you for making my day, Crystal. These events never disappoint. Well, I hope not to disappoint you. Cassandra said that she's recently discovered Dr. King, brought a lot of things together for her. I can totally empathize where you're coming from there. It was like that, similar for me in the beginning. Got Juliet and some others here saying hi as well. So hello and welcome to all of you. Tonight, we're going to be talking about awakening your psychic powers. Are psychic powers real? Or have we just all been watching too much fantasy TV on Netflix? If they are real, are they a gift? Is it just that some unique people are born with them and some aren't? Or can we all become psychic? The first thing I should say tonight is that we're going to be drawing on the wisdom, the knowledge, the experience of Master of Yoga, Dr. George King. Dr. King was the founder of the Aetherius Society, and he is also the person from whom we take the name of our spiritual path, which we now call King Yoga. Now, Dr. King was a man who had practiced advanced yoga for 8 to 10 hours a day for 10 years, and he had many, many amazing spiritual experiences as a result. On one occasion, he physically levitated while he was sending out powerful healing prayers. On other occasions, he became physically invisible. And he also mastered all of the basic, that's his word, psychic abilities, things like clairvoyance, advanced mediumship, and fully conscious astral projection, among others. And if you don't know what any of those are, by the way, don't worry, we're going to cover them all later. But also, you might be someone who's had experiences of your own. One of the thousands, if not millions of people who've had experiences that they can't really explain. Maybe you've had a premonition about something before it's happened. Or maybe you've had a really bad feeling about somebody when you've met them that's turned out to be true. Or has this ever happened to you? Been thinking about someone that you haven't heard from in years, just sort of randomly, and then the next day they call you out of the blue. You know, my mum would be the last person to claim that she was psychic, and yet that exact thing happens to her like literally all the time. Is that just coincidence, or is she tapping into some ability there? The point is, you know, you might already be psychic. Maybe you just don't call it that, right? Now, you might be thinking, you know, why should I believe any of these stories that I hear about psychic powers? And I would say, well, you don't. You don't, because really, it's your own experience that will really open your eyes, right? It's your own personal experience which is the key to really understanding psychic development, spiritual development. And that's why we say in King Yoga that you don't just believe in it, right? Because who wants a path you just can only have faith in? What about a path that you can experience? Because it's experience, more than any debate or philosophy, more than anything even that I could tell you tonight, which will really prove these things to you. So today we're going to be looking at 3 questions. The first of all is what makes psychic powers possible? The second is what we can do to awaken these psychic powers within us and what some of them are. And then finally, whether psychic powers are really good or bad and what we should be using them for. And then after that, we're going to do a guided meditation together. We'll do some of the practices that I'm going to talk about today, and then also I'm going to share with you some of the personal accounts, the experiences that Dr. King shared about his own psychic and spiritual powers. So do stay tuned for that. So first of all here, let's start with our first question about what makes psychic powers possible. I wanted to start by playing you this extract from a lecture given by Dr. King, and there's a few things that I wanted you to pay attention to when you're listening to this. The first is what he says about the aura, and then also what he says about the psychic centers, or what's more commonly known as the chakras, and then also what he says about mind. So let's listen to that first extract now.
Man is rather like that piece of iron in one respect, that his magnetic powers, in this respect his psychic powers, are dormant until they are brought into active manifestation. Not from the outside. He isn't just given these powers from the outside, but he realizes these powers within himself. We know that within the aura or magnetic field around each body there are psychic centers, or what we might refer to as little floodgates. These floodgates are fairly well closed in normal man, but in psychic man they are opened, and they are open to the higher aspects of mind. If we develop our psychic centers to such an extent that they operate in the correct manner, then we can see, feel, hear, touch, taste, smell, etc., the subtle forces of nature. Such a person capable of seeing and feeling the subtler forces of nature is a person who is a psychic. It's quite simple, it's quite easy to understand, there is no mystery attached to it.
I think it's wonderful how he just demystifies it there, and that's why I love that extract so much and wanted to share it with you. But so first of all, he's saying that these powers are something that we awaken from within ourselves, right? They're not just bestowed upon us as if they're some gift, but they're about manifesting our own inner potential, which I think is incredibly inspiring. Then he talks about the aura, right? And he says we all have an aura, right? Whether we can see it or whether we can feel it or not. And by the way, a clairvoyant could see this, right? But it's an energy field, right? And it's made of a more subtle substance than our physical body, but it's still physical, just physical in a different way. Then he says, in the aura, we have psychic centers or chakras, right? And he describes them, which are, well, if you can see in the illustration here, what we've got is the 7 major chakras that you have in the body, because there's many more of them. This is sufficient for now. But he describes them as floodgates, which I think is a very interesting analogy. And he says that they can be opened or closed to the higher aspects of what he calls mind. Now, here's something really interesting. He says elsewhere, actually, in another lecture, that without the psychic centers operating, you could not think at all about anything. Because it's through the psychic centers that thought, or mind stuff, which is what he calls it here, enters, and then it's slowed down and translated by the brain, which is like a receiving set. So he's saying there that your brain is like this receiving set for this all-pervasive energy of mind, which is actually outside of you, right? And that it enters into you through the chakras. And then he says that basically the difference between an ordinary person and a person who has psychic powers is that in the ordinary person, the chakras are virtually closed, whereas in a psychic person, they are open. And they are open to the higher aspects of mind. Now, you're probably asking yourself the obvious question, which is, well, how do you open these chakras, right? How do you activate them? And the key to activating the chakras is the mystical power of kundalini located at the base of the spine. Now, in most people, this power is virtually dormant. But what I want to play for you here is a compilation of extracts from some of Dr. King's lectures in which he talks about what happens when you raise this power.
As it comes through each psychic center in turn, through here, not around through the front, but up through the spine, through each psychic center in turn, and that center comes into its own and it begins to function, and great energy is drawn into the body and pushed out from the body. Tremendous energies. And the powers come. Clairvoyance, psychometry, telepathy, projection, and so on and so on. I could reel them off for a long time, these different powers which come. Then it's controlled again, and the powers are rejected, which they have to be. That's the big temptation, by the way. And then again it's risen to the next psychic center, and the powers become higher still. For the ordinary man, though, he can become enlightened And because when you rise this kundalini up here, when it begins to rise up here, these centers become activated, and they're like floodgates. This center here attracts a lower aspect of mind, which is a force outside the body. Only a low vibration of mind can enter in here. A higher vibration of mind can enter in here, but when we start talking about the heart and the throat and the Christ center, we're talking about the highest mental vibrations can enter. Because when kundalini is lodged in there, these gates open, and in comes this pressure of mind, which is an energy. Not only that, but the brain is activated in such a way that it can translate and understand this mind. That's the most important thing. And it is the power, the female power of kundalini in the base of the spine, or the serpent power, which gives this ability.
So he reels off several different powers there, which we'll come to in a moment. But for now, let's just focus on the takeaway, which I thought was so clear and so important. And he said that psychic and spiritual powers are the result of being able to attune ourselves with different aspects of mind, and that this is the result of being able to activate of activating the chakras so that they function correctly, and that this is the result of being able to raise the power of kundalini. Okay, so with that foundation, let's move on to our next question, which is, what can we do, or what can you actually do, I should say, to awaken these psychic powers within you? Because we all can. So Dr. King actually answered this question in a lecture he gave in 1962. So I want to start by playing you that lecture extract now.
The best ways of developing clairvoyance, my friends, are by becoming a battery, a channel for power to send out to others, and thereby becoming highly sensitized, becoming highly charged yourself, by charging the body and aura by deep breathing exercises in the correct manner, the correct balanced course of deep breathing exercises, by frequent relaxation, by service. These are the sure methods.
So what he's saying there is basically service to others and spiritual practices. That's the key, as well as proper relaxation, he says there too. But it's really that simple, really simple, in fact. Service to others, such as prayer and spiritual healing, and then spiritual practices like yoga breathing and mantra, right? And do that, and even if you have no interest whatsoever in developing psychic powers, you will still, nevertheless, become more psychic as a result. In fact, Dr. King singled out spiritual healing as one of the best all-round methods of spiritual development. And basically, these things will all help you to enhance your powers of concentration, which is the basis of all spiritual development. They'll help you to enhance the natural flow of energy through your chakras and around your subtle body. They'll help you to go beyond concentration to the stage of contemplation, right, in which you can begin to receive subtle impressions, and even cause you to draw up the power of kundalini up the spine in a natural, unforced fashion. You will become more sensitive and aware of this flow of energy through the chakras, and it is possible to extend all of the five senses psychically, which is what Dr. King was describing in the very first extract that we heard tonight. So, for example, psychic vision is also known as clairvoyance, right? So that's the psychic counterpart to vision. And an accomplished clairvoyant would be able to look into the past and the future, which is pretty amazing, right? They'd be able to see the aura around people, even around places. And they'd be able to see people who are no longer physically alive, but living on the other realms. And then you've got psychic hearing, right? So that's clairaudience. And clairaudience is when you're able to receive messages from people in the other realms, put it that way, without entering into a trance condition. And then you've got the other three. So you've got psychic touch, psychic smell, psychic taste even, although that one's probably pretty rare. But those are the 5 psychic centers, the counterparts to your basic senses, right? Now, it's possible that you may not develop any one of these, but rather more of a kind of a feeling, general feeling, and that's called clairsentience, right? And that's certainly more my experience. So rather than being able to see auras or see into the past and future, my own experience is more of having this feeling that you get, right? Maybe about a person or about an event coming up, or things like this. And I think what's important to bear in mind there too is that we all are different in terms of the psychic experiences we have and also the psychic powers that we develop. There are a couple other things I wanted to talk about as well that I mentioned in the introduction. One of the first things I said was about fully conscious astral projection as one of the things that Dr. King talked about that he had mastered. In sleep, we all project from the body, which is kind of a strange thing to think about. But most of us do it without any real memory or even any control. But what Dr. King was able to do was to project his consciousness from the physical body at will. And he was able to do that with memory and also control. So he could project his consciousness somewhere else on this realm or even onto another realm of existence. I also talked about advanced mediumship, right? And usually mediumship is about psychically hearing words or picking up on thoughts from beings in other realms, right? But what he was able to do, which is a very advanced and unique, as far as I know, type of mediumship, is that he would enter into a trance state of meditation known as samadhi in order to attain this mediumistic rapport with extremely enlightened beings from this world and even from other worlds as well. And that's where we get some of the amazing teachings that we have in the Aetherius Society. Now, there is one psychic attribute that I wanted to highlight here as well, because it's one of the most valuable faculties that we all have, and one that's essential to us. And that is the intuition. You can think of the intuition like the voice of your own higher self. It's like the higher aspect of your own consciousness, right? And you might say, well, do I have a higher self? And the answer is yes, we all do, no matter how much it may sometimes appear to the contrary in our life. And the more you listen to your higher self, the more you focus on it, the more you act on it, the closer relationship that you'll be able to develop with it, the more that you'll be able to tell the difference between your imagination and the voice, quote unquote, of your higher self speaking to you. The more that voice will become a greater presence in your life. And this presence can make a massive difference to you. Think about all the decisions we have to make in life. What spiritual path to follow, what spiritual teacher to choose, whether something is really true or not, whether anything I'm saying tonight to you is really true or not. And then other kind of more mundane things maybe, like whether to go for that job that you've been thinking about, or even whether and who to marry. That one's probably not so mundane, but you get my point. All of these decisions in life that we have to make, imagine if we could listen to our intuition and follow it as a guide. Our intuition, which is always right. Okay, in the beginning, when we're just learning, we may misinterpret it and get it wrong, but nevertheless, it is always right. So, if you want to develop it, you want to take notice of it, you want to act on it, you want to focus on spiritual truth. You want to do your spiritual practices, and most of all, your service to others. Now, if you want to discover more about these practices and also these ways of giving service that we talked about today, I really recommend the book Realize Your Inner Potential, in which you can find all of these in there. And then also we're going to do kind of like a little taster of some of these in the guided meditation to follow. Now, the third thing I wanted to talk about today, which is, are psychic powers good or bad? And how should we use them? And like so many things in life, psychic powers are neither good or bad in and of themselves. It's how we use them that really counts. And I thought to illustrate this point, I'd share with you this extract of Dr. King telling this amazing little story in a lecture that he gave in 1966. So let's listen to that now.
A Western writer by the name of MacDonald Bain, he wrote one or two very good books while he was alive. And I think he wrote a book called, it's called The Yoga of the Christ. And in it he was traveling in Tibet with a master. And they came to a cave, and a river was in flood. They came to this cave, and there in that cave, at the back of the cave, there was a yogi sat in Padmasana, and they woke him up out of his meditations, and they said, "How do we cross the river? It is in flood." So he said, "There's a ferry running," and they said, "No, it isn't. The ferry isn't running." So he said, "Walk across." So the master said, "Can you walk across?" And the yogi said, "Yes, quite easily." And he got up and he walked across the river, and he walked back again, across the top of the water. And he sat down again, and the master said, "How long has it taken you to learn that?" So he says, 20 years have I been here in meditation. And he said, in 20 years' time you've been able to walk across the river and save a penny on the ferry? He said, "Haven't you been wasting an awful lot of time and energy? What about the people in the marketplace who are starving?" The yogi, of course, was absolutely shaken with this, and he went back and put his eyes upwards again and closed himself down, and something like 10 or 15 minutes afterwards he came out of it and he said, "Master, you are right. Wherever you go, I will follow." The master said, "Don't follow, go yourself and act." Well, of course it's true, isn't it? Anybody can learn these stunts. When I first started to practice yoga, I used to amuse people greatly by sticking pins in myself and stopping myself bleeding and all this kind of utter nonsense. But it isn't worth the effort it takes to do it. And it's a very easy thing. Anybody who has anything like a respectable mentality at all can, through concentration, learn how to walk on water and other nonsense like that, but it isn't worth the effort it takes to do it. It takes years of divorce from the suffering of mankind and the ghastly vibrations of mankind as a whole, years from the shocking vibrations of a city out in the open, beautiful country air of the mountains with worshipping disciples to bring you your food and all the rest of the nonsense you need, to walk across the water. And all this time you could spend in healing others, in sending out your prayer.
So one of my favorite qualities of Dr. King is that he's just so definite with truth, so certain. I think that's almost like an attribute we can take within ourselves on our own quest for truth. But what I take away here is that what's important is that we don't make psychic powers an end in and of themselves, but rather a means to an end, and that end is service. The question really is, what can these psychic and spiritual powers mean to the world as a whole? That's what it's really about. Dr. King goes even so far as to say in one of his lectures that the only reason that he taught this information is because he believed that it would make us better in our service to others. And that if instead it was just for our own personal benefit, then he would not give such information. And I think that really says it all. And that's what King Yoga is really about. It's about developing yourself, awakening your psychic powers with the primary motive of helping others. Or perhaps I should say awakening these powers in the course of our spiritual service to others. Because service to others is what our world really needs. And that's certainly something that I think we can all agree on. So if you take away anything from today and this part of the event, there's three things that I think are worth keeping in mind. The first is that You heard it here, right? Psychic powers are real. And they are the result of the activation and the proper function of the chakras. And it's the raising the kundalini that is key to manifesting their potential. The second thing is that at the end of the day, psychic powers are neither good nor bad in and of themselves. It's really about how you use them, right? And the best way to use them is in service to others. And actually, that's the best way to develop them as well. He talks about prayer and spiritual healing as one of the best all-round methods of spiritual development. And then finally, one of the most valuable faculties of all, one which we all have and we can all develop, is the intuition, the voice of your own higher self. Because it's through the intuition that you can recognize spiritual truth. So I think you just consider for a moment the promise that awaits you if you are willing to make the effort to help others, if you are willing to develop yourself, if you're willing to gradually cause this kundalini to rise in a natural, unforced fashion, you will awaken your chakras. You will awaken these psychic powers within you. You'll be able to do things that until now you probably thought were impossible. Giving spiritual healing to others, radiating powers wherever you go, being able to attune yourself to your own higher self, the intuition, which, if you follow its promptings, will guide you all the way to the real goal, to a state of higher awareness, to the only power, or I should say the greatest power of all, which is wisdom. So with that in mind, this quest for wisdom, we're going to turn now to our guided meditation, and we're going to do some of these practices. Just a taster, of course, but it's practices including the yoga breathing, the visualization, even the prayer, right, which you can use to begin to awaken these psychic powers within you. And then, like I said, I'm going to share with you as well as part of this some of the amazing experiences which Dr. King had in the course of his own spiritual journey. So remember, how do we awaken these powers? By service to others, by spiritual practices, and like he says, by proper relaxation. So if you'd like to follow along, and I certainly invite you to do so, you can just sit now with your back straight, and you want your head slightly tilted upwards. Put your feet flat on the floor, your hands on the knees, fingers outstretched. Remember not to hunch up the shoulders in any way, but we want to begin to relax. Release any tension within you. You want to make sure that that spine is straight, but again, you want to keep the rest of the body relaxed at the same time. Just give anyone a moment to catch up with us here. As you're getting yourself into position, you can begin to close your mouth so you begin to breathe through the nostrils. And then if you wish, you can also close the eyes so you can begin to go within. And then as you do that, I'd like you to just become aware of your breathing. Is your breath shallow or deep? You want to breathe in slowly and steadily through both nostrils. And as you do that, you want to try and lengthen your breath as much as possible, but without any strain. You just want to let your diaphragm swell outwards as you breathe in, and then just pull the diaphragm in gently again as you breathe out, just expelling the air from your lungs completely. So again, just let your diaphragm swell outwards as you breathe in, and then pull the diaphragm in gently again as you breathe out, just expelling the air from your lungs completely. If your focus strays at any time, you can just bring yourself back to become aware of your breathing again. Just use it as a focal point for your concentration. So we're not trying to empty the mind, we're just trying to focus the mind. We're beginning to practice concentration. Remember, that's the basis of all spiritual development. So we're just breathing slowly and steadily through both nostrils, making that breath as long as possible, but without any strain. Just take a moment now to become aware of your body. And just allow any tension to melt away. Melt away. Melt away. Just begin to detach from your surroundings, any noise in your environment, any other distraction, and just go within, allowing yourself to relax, letting this tension go, just dissipating. As you continue here to breathe out and in as deeply as you can, but without any strain. As you continue to breathe deeply, just observe, are your in and out breaths equal? Just try to make them so. Make your in breaths and your out breaths as even as possible. Remember just to pull in the diaphragm lightly upon exhalation and squeeze gently as much air as possible from the lungs, which will allow you to breathe deeper. The goal here now is to breathe in and out with a regular and even rhythm, making the breaths as long as possible. No strain. Again, breathing deeply with a regular and even rhythm. Just feel yourself surrounded by a gentle peace. And allow yourself to relax. Allow whatever emotions and thoughts rise just to pass. Remain detached, an observer. Allow them to just settle like sediment in a pool that's been stirred up. And let your mind gradually become clear as you keep yourself focused on your breathing. I'm going to ask you to turn your attention inward now and add the mental affirmation, which should flow in and out without any strain of any kind. I am now purifying my mind and body. Just repeat this to yourself, allowing it to flow in and out as you breathe in and out. I am now purifying my mind and body. I am now purifying my mind and body. Again, I am now purifying my mind and body. So when we perform this first of 6 yoga breathings taught by Dr. King, we are beginning to go within, a first step on the journey from the base chakra to the chakra at the top of the head. So you can just attach now from that affirmation and tune in to the words of Dr. King, compiled from his books and lectures based on his own experience. This is Dr. King now. Kundalini rises from the base chakra, penetrates the sex center and moves higher to the solar plexus. As it is moved upwards, it takes all the power from the sex center, which becomes dormant. Well, when Kundalini actually rises in the sex center, one has clairvoyant powers. When Kundalini rises up the solar plexus center, one has appreciable clairvoyant powers. So as you dwell on these words of Dr. King, the journey upwards through the chakras, just remember to keep bringing yourself back to the breath and keep it as a focal point of your concentration. Long, deep and even rhythm, out and in. Hear the words of Dr. King again. Kundalini is then moved consciously up into the heart center. When the power pierces the heart center, that chakra blossoms forth, and the tremendous power of love can, for the first time, be understood and radiated to all in need. He is able to hear the forces within this vortex of power. Some of these forces sound to him like a giant bell which is tolling, and often he will hear this so loudly that it will appear to do his eardrums actual physical damage. When the Kundalini pierces through the heart center, you become light in the body and can float. You can become invisible at will. Back to our breathing again. The breath is without a doubt the most important way that we take within us the universal life force, or prana. And pranayama, which is another name for yoga breathing, helps us to control the flow of this energy into and around the body, which helps to enhance the function of our chakras, helps to make us more sensitive and aware of the flow of energy through the chakras. Now you can potentize every breath you take to revitalize yourself, to cleanse yourself, and even draw within yourself greater power. So we're going to now visualize that the air around us is saturated with this power. And we're going to consciously take it within us on the breath. So imagine now that the air around you is completely filled with this bright white light. And imagine that it is so bright that it would dazzle the vision of anyone who is looking at you. Again, just imagine the air now around you completely filled with this bright white light. Imagining that it is so bright that it would dazzle the vision of anyone looking at you now. You may even start to feel a tingling sensation around your body. Some people feel it as a pressure or even tiny pinpricks of light. And this is the effect of the prana coming into contact with your aura and your chakras. So now imagine that your body is like an empty drinking glass. And as you breathe in, imagine that this glass is being filled with white light so that it's full by the time you complete your breath. And then on the out breath, imagine that the drinking glass is emptying from the top downwards so that when you complete your breath outwards, there is nothing left in the glass at all. Again, just fill it completely on the in-breath and empty it completely on the out-breath from the top downwards. Beginning to revitalize our whole being, charging yourself on the in-breath, cleansing yourself on the out-breath. Filling yourself completely with the white light as you breathe in, emptying yourself completely again as you breathe out. Filling yourself completely with the white light as you breathe in, and emptying yourself completely again as you breathe out, from the top downwards, like a drinking glass. So with this practice, you are beginning to develop a greater control of this flow of prana into and around your body, which is a stepping stone to higher states of awareness and your destiny. What is that destiny? Here we have again the words of Dr. King. If the aspirant is then able to raise consciously the great power of kundalini into the throat center, the physical heart nearly stops beating. The aspirant is now sitting absolutely and completely immobile. He or she is in a very deep state of trance, to all intents and purposes in a state of conscious death. But the intuition has not stopped. Inner shining light and deep vision are being experienced now. He is initiated and knows immediately, even in a second, a great mystic language which gives unto him a considerable amount of wisdom. He can speak it fluently and at all times, and invoke power and force to help his friends, even his world, by the use of this particular language. Highly elevated mental energies are now being drawn into the throat center, and the meditator is beginning to understand and appreciate the irrevocable occult laws for the first time. He can hear the tremendous vortex of power within the Christ center above, which physically sounds to him like the rushing waters of a gigantic waterfall. In fact, at first, he cannot hear anything else except this. And then, as he becomes more attuned, he hears the subtle symphony of life. He can hear a tree growing, a man talk to another miles away. He can hear a cloud form 2,000 feet above him if he thinks about it. The aspirant is now an adept. As you listen to these words, again the deep and even breath, drawing this light within you on the in-breath, emptying yourself completely from the top downwards on the out-breath, developing a greater control of this prana, of this universal life force through and around your body, a stepping stone to these experiences, these awesome experiences that he is talking about here. And he goes on. If he is a great enough person to lift kundalini just a little further, so that even the throat center becomes inhibited, he becomes a master for that time, and he is capable of meditation for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 50 years, 200 years. He has great vision, either back through time or into the future. He has a vision of things happening on other worlds. He can even, if all other conditions are right, leave this earth and visit places like Saturn and so on, which few people have ever done. A person with kundalini operating here with this center fully open and all the rest of the centers completely closed is a person of great wisdom and great enlightenment. And if you raise the kundalini even higher than this, to the crown chakra, you will indeed become wise. And you will indeed become great. And indeed realize that in the midst of your greatness, your smallness, you will indeed become humble because of your enlightenment. Isn't that inspiring? And we can all achieve this amazing spiritual state. It is our destiny to do so. Remember, the service to others and the spiritual practices, the focus on spiritual truth. Service to others like dynamic prayer. So let's do just that. So far, we've been focused on drawing this prana into ourselves. But now what we're going to do is radiate this outwards with as much love as we possibly can. And the more we express this love, the more we act in selfless service, the more we will draw this power of kundalini upwards. Now, anybody can become a channel for spiritual energy like this, and one of the best ways is through prayer. So we'll detach now from that drinking glass visualization, and instead what we're going to visualize is a white light coming down now from space into the top of your head. So remember, a white light coming down now from space into the top of the head. You want to see it charging your brain. You want to see it coming down through your head, your neck, your shoulders, and into your chest. And then see it flowing outwards and filling your heart chakra. Just a few inches in front of your breastbone. See this chakra radiant, in fact, like a bright star. As bright again as you can possibly visualize. And then see this light coming down again now through your arms, into your hands, and out through the palms of your hands. And I invite you now just to open your eyes for a moment so you can see what I'm doing, which is I'm holding my hands in what's called the prayer mudra, the position that we use for prayer. And basically what this does is allow the free flow of energy out from our heart chakra here, so it's not blocked as it would be in a case like this, and also the free flow of energy from the chakras that we have in the palms of our hands. So we've got our palms facing forward, roughly shoulder height like this, fingers together, and I'm going to lead us in a prayer now, and what I want you to do is just want you to visualize this white light pouring outwards from you. I want you to try and condition this light with as much love as you possibly can. I want you to really try and tune into the meaning of the words as you visualize this light pouring outwards from you. So you can just close the eyes now as you visualize that. And I say this prayer. Almighty Father of all creation, let your light flow through this world now. Let it shine into the hearts and the minds of men now. so that all may look within and see the glory of thine everlasting being. O Spirit of spirits, let your love flow through the hearts and the minds of man now, so that he may look within and see the great and wondrous glory of his divine heritage. Just continue to see this light pouring outwards from you, out into our world, to uplift, heal, and inspire it. Feel within you as much love as you possibly can. And as you do this, certainly with practice, you may start to feel within the chakras, especially in the palms of your hand, like a tingling sensation. Some people feel it as a heat or a pressure. And the more you do this, the more you practice, the more that these real sensations can become a reality for you, helping to prove to you that they are really real. So when you're ready, you can just relax the arms and the shoulders there. And we do something called the sealing mudra, which is just to brush your right palm over the left palm like that. And that's just to seal off the flow of energy and also just symbolic of completing this practice. Now that was a prayer actually from a set of teachings that we use as a practice called the 12 blessings. And that was given by the Master Jesus through the mediumship of Dr. King. You remember I talked earlier about this advanced mediumship that he was able to do, able to attain a mediumistic rapport with enlightened beings from other realms and either from other worlds, the higher realms of other worlds. And the Master Jesus was one of those. And so he gave a set of teachings called the 12 blessings, and that was one of those prayers. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because we also have our daily online world healing services. So I've just given you a tiny little taster there in one prayer. But at 8 p.m. later tonight, in fact, and other days throughout the week, we have these online services. You can check out the link in the description if you'd like to learn more or join in together with people from around the world who are working to change the world with spiritual energy, helping to raise global consciousness, and also helping to awaken their own psychic powers. Now, there's literally so much more I could have included tonight from these awesome teachings and even practices of Dr. King. So I'm really happy to be able to say that the good news is I'll be hosting a follow-up event for anyone who'd like to come along and talk more about the chakras, psychic powers, and spiritual development. And that will be next week, Wednesday, 1st of June at 6:45. You can find the link again in the description of this video. We're in the chat even. Julian should be able to put that there for us. And if you've registered for tonight's event, you'll get that as well in an email. Failing all that, you can also email me, and that is darren@aetherius.org. So that brings us to the end of our guided meditation this evening. And so I wanted to turn it over to your questions. I've got the chat just here. So if you've got any questions, feel free to drop them in now. I'm going to go through the chat in just a moment and see if I can pick up any from earlier in the talk, and we'll get started. Okay, we've got a question right here that I can see from Deborah, who says, thanks Deborah by the way, who says, what makes the 12 blessings better than other prayers? What are the magic ingredients? Okay, so I've talked about the 12 blessings here, really trying to highlight to you what an amazing way it is to send out spiritual energy into the world to help change the world and raise global consciousness. And one aspect about it that I'll highlight is that, and one of the key ingredients of it, the way that it was designed even by the Master Jesus, is that first of all, what you are doing is that you are sending out a blessing to a group soul or even a great being. So for example, the first blessing is, blessed are they who work for peace. So that's the group soul of all those who are working for peace. But the seventh blessing, for example, is blessed is the Mother Earth, which is obviously, well, in our teaching we believe, a great and mighty goddess of tremendous compassion and spiritual power, right? A being. And so what you're doing there is you're sending out your energy to this being, and what happens is this energy comes back to you, right? And actually we're told that this happens instantaneously. So you're sending energy out and you get this tremendous power of love that comes back to you. And then you can use that to send out more energy again. So what makes the 12 blessings so amazing, or certainly one of the things that does, is that you have this positive spiral of energy that's building up, allowing you to become, to radiate more of this amazing spiritual energy out into the world. Thank you very much, Deborah, for that question. Let's see what else we've got here. Another question here, what are the best prayers we can use to help our world? Well, the 12 blessings are obviously very good, but in general I would say that what you're looking for here is a prayer that's balanced, that includes the world outside of yourself. You want it to be selfless. You want it to be for the upliftment, the inspiration, the guidance of all life. To help all life towards a state of greater God realization. That's really the key. It's the divine spark within you, praying for the divine spark within all life, so that together we can all go back to God. Here's Deanne says, thank you for making the distinction re higher intuition. Thank the heavens for knowledge, teaching, inspiration of Dr. King. I have to agree there. Thanks, Deanne. Let's see what else we've got. Crystal is just making an observation here. I think we all possess abilities we can't understand due to the unnurturing environment, which isn't a coincidence. The evil forces in the world would be like irritating fleas on a dog if we truly knew ourselves in a more supportive environment to grow mentally and spiritually. Totally agree. I mean, we live in a world of tremendous distractions, materialism being one of them, things like sexual desire, and all these things that we're taught are important, like material accumulation, when really it's about our own God realization and helping all life back to the divine. And I think but we can still find ourselves in a more conducive environment in our life, and that is a choice that we make, right? I mean, it's one thing to say that the world as a whole is, a very unconducive environment to doing this, and it is. But we can still find ourselves amongst people of a like mind, for example, who are also on the spiritual path, on this quest for spiritual truth, who are devoting themselves to serving others and helping the world as a whole. And just being a part of a group soul like this, like being part of the Aetherius Society, I can certainly say from my experience, like helps to lift you up in your spiritual path, helps to keep you inspired, helps to keep you focused on spiritual truth, right? On the things that really matter. Because as much as we have to all do the things that, keep us going in life, like, cooking food and going to work and earning money and all this, to be able to have that focus in your life on spiritual truth and the people around you to support that is something that we can all choose to have in our life, right? So that's certainly one way that you could change that. I think also the more we do our spiritual practices, of which I've just given a taster of this evening, the more we can strengthen ourselves, the more we can strengthen and go deeper into our own realization, our own true belief in these things about what really matters in life. And the more we do our spiritual practices, the more we focus on spiritual truth, the more that we serve others, the deeper this well of conviction that we have that we can draw on to help us in our moments when things are most difficult. And I think that's if we keep that all in mind and use it as kind of a guideline to make spiritual truth, spiritual practices, spiritual service a part of our everyday life, there's no end to the potential that we can realize within ourselves. Let's see what else we've got here. Okay, Deborah says, is hands-on healing better than distant healing? I guess the only thing I'd like to say there is that you can still achieve results with both, right? And then sometimes, especially in the past couple of years when we've had the pandemic, everyone's been in lockdown, whatever, it's been very difficult to be actually physically present with people, especially those people who might have been most in need. You can still certainly help them with absent healing. Dr. King taught a technique of absent healing as well as a technique of contact spiritual healing. You can find that in his book, You Too Can Heal. There's also a great discovery guide on our website about spiritual healing and how you too can become a spiritual healer. And in that technique, he outlines exactly what you can do and even how best to help someone who, for example, might be going for an operation, or someone who just isn't well, or anyone else who's requested spiritual healing from you. Oh, Lion Rock says, what does a chakra look like? Well, this is a great question, and I'm glad somebody asked. I think what's interesting here is that we can compare what a chakra looks like between someone whose chakra is kind of partially closed, like they would be in an ordinary person, like Dr. King was describing, or in an enlightened spiritual master. So in a person where they're partially closed, they would be very dull. But in the person who is as great spiritual master, they'd be like vibrant whirlpools of energy, glowing orbs of multicolored lights, almost like a whirlpool. He says one way you can actually visualize a chakra, just in general, is if you think about when you're in a bathtub and you take the plug out and you see the water kind of in a vortex going down, it's that kind of thing. And actually, if you remember in the picture that we showed earlier, they were like depicted almost as like flowers. Sometimes they talked about as lotuses, right? And they're connected on a very thin stem to the spine. So that's one way to that you can visualize it there. Now, what does this person says? I had heat in my palms. Wow! I don't know if that was from today, but that's fantastic. That's exactly what I was talking about. When you're doing the prayer like we were talking about, right, and you're visualizing this energy pouring outwards from you, from the heart chakra, from the palms in the center of your hands, you can start to feel it exactly as the person described, like a heat, right? And that's the feeling of the flow. That's the sensation of the flow of spiritual energy. Sometimes people feel it as a pressure. Actually, the first time I ever felt this, I'll share this with you, it was like this intense pressure, almost like a nail in the middle of my palm, which sounds bad, but I just say it that way because it was so intense and it was so memorable. I mean, it's 12 years later or whatever it is, I can still remember it so clearly. And I think it's great that you shared that experience. Thank you so much. Let's see what else we've got here. So Katie says, what if someone serving others on the spiritual path has not had any psychic experience they can recall? What could be the reason? Does this matter? This is a great question as well. And like I said, I haven't manifested any of those 5 psychic senses that I was talking about, the clairvoyance, the clairaudience, the psychic touch, taste, and smell. But for me, it's more of like a general feeling, and that was called clairsentience, if you remember from the talk. So, I think there's a lot of things that we actually feel which are the result of becoming more aware and sensitive to the flow of energy through our chakras, but we may not just think about it in that way. Right? I think there's a lot of experiences that we do have that are actually the result of this. Maybe you think, I was just, someone says something, you were just thinking that. Or you have a premonition about something, like I was saying, or you just have a particular feeling about something, or you're listening to spiritual truth and you get this tingling sensation up and down your spine, or something like this. So these are all little experiences which sometimes we just shrug off, but to me are evidence of becoming more psychically aware. But in general, does it matter? No, it doesn't matter that you haven't had these, although Dr. King does say that on the journey to enlightenment, that we will go through this psychic stage, right? You will manifest these psychic powers. You have to. It's just the mechanics of it, right? As you are drawing up the power of kundalini through the psychic centers, as you're raising up the spine, you will begin to manifest these powers. You will become more sensitive to the subtle forces of nature. And you will have this clairaudience, or you will have one or more of these psychic powers depending on your own, how you develop, right? And the spiritual experiences that you have. Let's see. Thank you. I tried Kundalini meditation recently and felt weak and dizzy. Is it a sign that I was doing it incorrectly? I also felt the warmth rising at my back, ending in a pressure inside my head. Well, I can't say I know exactly what you mean by Kundalini meditation, but I think that what I certainly can recommend is the yoga breathing exercises that are taught by Dr. King, because he designed them as a safe and balanced method of spiritual development that can cause you to draw up the power of Kundalini in a natural and unforced fashion, which is the key that we've been given. So as well as doing our spiritual service, we can do these spiritual practices like the ones he gave to enhance our personal development in a safe and balanced way. And so I can't speak to exactly the practice that you may have done, but certainly if I was recommending it to anyone, I would say to try those practices, those yoga breathing practices that you can find in Realize Your Inner Potential, and also that you can find in another book called Contact Your Higher Self through yoga. Okay. Question here, what if one does not believe in Jesus and Christianity? Well, Graham, I don't know if you mean, whether that means that you can't have psychic powers or you can't be on this path, but basically, what I'm saying tonight is that this is not about belief per se. This is about your own personal experience, right? This is about, first of all, I wanted to help you understand that, literally what are the mechanics, what makes psychic powers possible, so we could demystify that, so that you could see that it's not about faith or belief, right? It's about doing the spiritual work, the service, the spiritual practices to begin to enhance and to open your chakras, right? So that you become more sensitive to and aware of the flow of these energies, and the experiences that you will have as a result of this are what will prove these things to you. So it's not like you need to believe in this particular faith or that particular Christianity, that particular religion. It's more about you having your own personal experiences so that you can begin to understand psychic and spiritual development for yourself. Let's see. If anyone has... I think there's a question here from Katie. Do you have any spiritual psychic experiences that you can share? Can you tell us about any psychic experiences you've had, Darren? We've just got a few minutes here, so I'll tell you about one, which is... some years ago now, I was with a friend in California. We were sitting at the beach in the car, and she was going through a tough time at that time. And so I thought, well, maybe I could, do a little spiritual healing. I didn't know much, to be honest. I mean, I don't even know if I'd read the book, You Too Can Heal by Dr. King. I just could have understood some of the basic principles. But I said, well, just put your hand in mine. So she put her hand, like her palm in mine, so we were sitting palm to palm. I was sitting in the driver's seat, she was in the passenger seat, and I just thought this vibrant white light through me, right? Like we were just doing in the prayer, actually. And almost instantaneously, I felt this intense heat and pulsing sensation in my palm. And it gradually started to overwhelm my whole body to the point where my third eye was pulsing so intensely I couldn't think even the prayer anymore. It just completely took over, and the vibration, if I have to call it that, in the car was amazing. It was like the physical sensation even overwhelming me was amazing. And so I just kept that up for a few minutes, and then it started to come down from it. And when you have these experiences, you always kind of wonder, like, well, I wonder if that person felt it or not. And I looked at her, and her eyes were like wide. She was like, she was in shock, and she was like waving her hand through the air like this, kind of like feeling the ripples of energy in the air. She said, how did you do that? I was like, what? Not always that dramatic, but certainly these experiences are possible. And you can speak to or talk to any spiritual healer in the Aetherius Society. I'm sure they'd be happy to share with you some of the experiences that they've had giving healing to people, some of the feedback they've received from patients as well. And you can start to begin to appreciate more and more that these psychic powers, these spiritual powers, which we can use in service to others, really are real. So I think I'll leave it there. We just got a couple minutes now to 8 p.m. Again, I invite you all to join in with the 12blessings.org online service, where you can change the world with spiritual energy and begin to awaken your own psychic powers. Thank you again for coming tonight, and may God bless each and every one of you.